Yeah, so we will continue as we have for the last couple of weeks, looking at loving kindness, how to cultivate loving kindness. And we'll start with some prayers. I did send to Venerable Dundrup a new set of prayers, a little bit bigger words. So we'll do these to begin with, and then at the end of the class, there's a few prayers to dedicate the merit and pray for the long life of our teachers. Okay, so this is saying prayers is to help us get into a good state of mind for what we're doing here. And after the prayers, we'll do some meditation. So really try to feel that your reason, your motivation for joining this class is to be of benefit to yourself, of course, but also to other beings, to all other beings, as much as you can possibly feel that. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And the 4 immeasurable thoughts. So we'll say these 4 slowly. Try to reflect on the words and try to generate that particular state of mind as we read these words. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So the main focus for this course is learning how to cultivate the attitude of loving kindness. And in Tibetan language, the word for meditation is gom, and the meaning of that is to familiarize or to get familiar with, to get habituated to. So that's really what we're trying to do when we practice meditation, is we're trying to make our mind familiar with more positive states of mind, positive attitudes. And I've heard, I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, but I've heard that the word for meditation in Sanskrit is bhavana, and the meaning of that word is to cultivate. It's the same word that's used like farmers cultivating crops in their fields. So what we are trying to do, like, is if our mind is like a field and we are trying to cultivate good things in our mind, like loving kindness, compassion, patience, and so on. So that's what we're supposed to be doing, or that's the goal, the purpose of meditation, is cultivating good states of mind, making our mind more and more familiar with positive thoughts and feelings and experiences. And by doing that, by making our minds familiar with these, cultivating these, then they start to become more and more natural and spontaneous, like our natural way of being, instead of like we trying to feel that way, but it just will arise. And that's definitely my experience. I can say that in the past, I had a really hard time feeling love and compassion. I mean, sometimes they would pop up, but very rarely. And so it was kind of frustrating. But I could really see that through working with the practices for cultivating love and compassion, making my mind familiar with those, then they just arise more naturally, easily, spontaneously in me now. It's kind of like this, they become your default mode, your natural way of being. And then this word love, I usually use the word loving kindness, but in some Buddhist books, texts, they just use the word love. And there's probably lots of different ideas in people's minds about the meaning of love. Like, we talk about falling in love, and we have love songs and so on. But in Buddhism, when we use this term, love or loving kindness, the meaning of it is it's a wish for happiness, wishing ourselves and others to have happiness, to have good experiences, and it's based on understanding that that's what everybody wants. Everybody, just like us, we want to be happy. We want to have good experiences. We don't want to have bad experiences. So everybody else is the same. Not just people, but animals, insects, all living beings. They all have that wish for happiness, for good experiences, and they don't want suffering or bad experiences. So we understand that, and then we respect the wish that others have to be happy, and we want to do what we can to make them happy. So that's what's love is all about, loving kindness. And I've heard some people say that they're not so comfortable with the term love. Yeah, it doesn't really resonate with them. And that's why, an alternative is loving kindness. But if even that you're not comfortable with, you could also just use kindness. Yeah. So if that's more comfortable, you can use that, or friendliness or caring. So you could choose your own word if you don't like the word love. But it's a quality we already have. And what we're trying to do in Buddhism is to increase it, expand it, grow it, so that we have it more of the time, and we have it for more people and living beings. So we can do that by doing meditation. So last week we did one meditation that is to cultivate loving kindness. And there we just thought about, we only tried it with one person, but the idea is you think of one person and you generate the wish for them to be happy, and then you think of somebody else and then somebody else. So you do, one person at a time, starting with easy people you find easy to love, and then gradually moving on to those who are more difficult. So that's one practice for cultivating loving kindness. And then at the end of the class last week, I just briefly introduced another practice, another meditation for cultivating loving kindness, and that is to reflect on the kindness of others, to think about how others have been helpful to us and are helpful to us. Yeah, that's the meaning of kindness. We receive a lot of help, a lot of kindness from others. And I think we could also refer to this practice as cultivating gratitude. So there's a lot of talk about gratitude these days. I've heard, it's been the subject of research, and it has been found to be a very positive and beneficial state of mind. Just feeling grateful. Of course, there's different things we can feel grateful for, like just, having good health and so on. But in this case, what we're doing in this meditation is feeling grateful for what others do for us, from what we have received from others. And so this is a really helpful way to cultivate positive feelings for them. When we realize how much we are dependent on them, then the natural feeling that comes up in our mind is we want to repay their kindness. We want to help them in return for what they have done for us. So I thought we would do a meditation on this tonight, and then I'll do a little bit more explanation of it, how it can be used, and so on. So we'll start with sitting down and settling ourselves down in the present. We'll do some breathing meditation, and then I'll do a guided reflection, a guided meditation on this topic of contemplating the kindness of others. So start by getting your body into a comfortable position, but not too comfortable so that you fall asleep. We do want to stay awake when we're meditating. And it's good if you can sit with your back straight, whether you're sitting on the floor, you're sitting on the chair. Try to have your back straight. But the different parts of the body, muscles and so on, should be as relaxed as possible, not tight or tense. So you need to find a way of sitting that's both relaxed, but also upright and alert. And if you're feeling tired, sleepy, and you think you might become sleepy during the meditation, it's better not to close your eyes all the way, but leave them open a little so there's light coming in. And that can help you to stay awake. And let your mind relax. That means put aside any thoughts there may be in your mind that are related to things you did today. So leave aside thoughts of your activities from today or yesterday or any time in the past. Put those aside for now. And do the same with any thoughts about what you're going to do later, tonight, tomorrow, and so on, the future. So just leave aside the past and the present and let your mind be in the present moment. Leave aside the past and the future and let your mind be in the present moment, right here, this moment, and right here, wherever you are. And be aware of your breathing coming in and going out. Let the rhythm of your breathing be natural. Don't try to control or interfere with your breathing. Just let your body breathe naturally. And just in a light way, with a light touch of your mind, be aware of the breath as it is coming in and then as it is going out. There may be pauses between one breath and another, or between the in-breath and the out-breath. So that's normal. And just try not to let your mind get distracted just because there's a pause in the breathing. Continue keeping your awareness on the breathing in whatever way you feel it. Yeah, whatever part of your body you're able to feel the breath more easily, naturally, then just let your awareness rest there and be aware of each breath coming in and going out. So we'll do that for a few minutes to really help our minds to settle down. So now we'll move into the guided reflective meditation. So bring to mind a time when you were in a difficult situation, you really needed help, and someone stepped forward to help you. Someone was there for you and gave you the help that you needed, or at least tried to help you, showed concern and care and tried to help you in your difficulties. So try to remember that experience. Doesn't have to be something major. It could be even you were trying to carry something heavy and you had trouble doing it on your own and someone came along and helped you to carry it. And then try to remember what kind of thoughts and feelings you had in your mind in relation to that person who was so helpful for you. And now imagine that that person who helped you is in a difficult situation. So imagine they are in trouble, they are in need of help for some reason. And again, it could be something simple like just trying to carry something heavy and they're not able to do it on their own. And how would you feel when you notice this, when you see that person is in need of help? What would you do? So I think it's just a natural response when we are helped by someone, receive kindness from someone, that we naturally want to help that person in return. Something that just arises naturally, spontaneously in our heart. So in our life, we have received a lot of help and kindness from others, starting from the earliest part of our life. We probably don't remember being a baby or a small child, but see if you can imagine yourself at that time in your life. We've all seen babies and small children, and it's obvious that they are quite helpless and they need to be taken care of by others, by adults. So imagine yourself at that time in your life as a baby, as a small child, a toddler, and who it was that took care of you. Probably your mother, and also your father, maybe grandparents, aunts, uncles. So who were the caregivers at that time in your life when you were so much in need of help? So try to imagine that situation and recognize how much time and energy those people spent taking care of you. And in addition to those people like our family and other caregivers who took care of us when we were very small, there have been many other people who have shown us kindness over the years. For example, teachers. Now we have a lot of knowledge. We can read, we can write, we can use computers, we know math, history, geography, and so on. But when we were very small, we didn't know any of these things. We didn't even know how to talk, much less read. So there were people who taught us those things, probably our mother to begin with, teaching us how to talk. And then when we went to school, our teachers taught us how to read the alphabet and how to do, and they taught us other things as well. So our knowledge, the knowledge that we have now, slowly built up over the years through the kindness of our teachers. And we sometimes, maybe we feel negative towards our teachers. Some of them may have been harsh with us. Some of them may have been bad-tempered. But they're human beings, and they have a hard job. Being a teacher isn't easy, and usually the salary isn't great. So it's good to appreciate the fact that they did spend that time and energy teaching us so that we have the knowledge we have now with which we can live on our own in the world. And then other people we are dependent on are those who produce the food that we eat. Every day we eat, quite a bit of food, and most of that food is grown. So farmers, plowing the fields and raising the crops and then harvesting them, and then other people transporting the crops, the vegetables and so on to a market, others working in factories to process them, make them into bread or packaged soups or whatever. So there's a huge number of people working in the food industry in order to provide us with the food that we eat every day. And we probably don't even meet most of those people, but we still benefit from the time and energy they put into producing food to keep us alive and healthy. And the same is true for the clothes that we wear. Clothing, shoes, jackets, hats, and the places where we live, our apartment, house, all the furniture we have, all the appliances, all the pots and pans and dishes in the kitchen, and having electricity and gas, lighting, having internet, having public transportation when we need it, or having roads that we can travel on when we drive, having a car or a bicycle. So all of these things we own and use and benefit from in our daily life are produced by other people. And without those people doing the work they do, we wouldn't have all of those things, and life would be quite difficult. And then another way we receive benefit from others is in terms of spiritual practice. So in Buddhism, spiritual practice includes cultivating positive states of mind, positive qualities, and creating virtue, good karma. And we need other people and other beings in relation to whom we do this spiritual work. For example, the practice of giving or generosity. This is a really good thing to do, but we need others who are in need and to whom we can give things, and then cultivate that practice of generosity. And another important practice is ethics, ethical conduct, which basically means not harming others, refraining from harmful actions like killing, stealing, speaking harshly, and so on to others. So again, we need other people and other beings to cultivate and practice ethics, ethical conduct, and that's a really virtuous practice. It's a way of creating a lot of virtue and a way of really developing our goodness, our good qualities. But we can't do it if we were all alone, if we were the only person in the whole world, no one else there in relation to whom we could do that practice. So these are just some examples of the ways in which other people and other beings are helpful to us, the ways in which we are dependent on them for our happiness and for our spiritual practice, spiritual growth. So after contemplating these examples, these points, just check what's going on in your mind. Just check to see if you have a greater sense of appreciation for others, other people, other beings, and if you feel a stronger wish to treat them with kindness in return. So So that was just very brief, and you probably didn't have enough time to really go in depth into those points, but I was just trying to introduce you to that meditation. It's a really amazing, wonderful, powerful meditation. It's in the Tibetan tradition, this meditation is part of a process, a kind of step-by-step process for the cultivation of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the aspiration to become a Buddha, fully enlightened Buddha, in order to benefit all other beings. And bodhicitta isn't something that's just going to all of a sudden arise in our mind, but we contemplate different points, different topics, and slowly, make our mind familiar with those, and that will culminate in the development of bodhicitta. So one of the steps for developing bodhicitta is a meditation that's called reflecting on the kindness of mothers. And the reason they use the mother, they focus on mother, is because of all the relationships that there are between two beings. The mother-child relationship is probably the closest one, the one that really shows amazing kindness. Of course, there are cases of mothers who are not loving to their children and are sometimes even cruel and harmful, abusive, but I think those are rare. I think those are the exception rather than the norm. They do happen, but I think in most cases when mothers give rise or give birth to children, they really love their children and do the best they can to care for them. And so so if we did have a good relationship with our mother, if our mother was someone who was very loving and caring, then we think of her and use our imagination, because we can't remember the early part of our life, but we can just imagine how we started off in her womb. Like it's quite amazing to think this body we have, which is now fully grown, fully developed, an adult body, but at the beginning of our life, our body was just a tiny little fertilized egg inside of our mother's womb. And then it started to grow and turn into a fetus, and then a baby, and eventually came out. But even during that time when we were in her womb, she most probably was very loving and caring, and maybe made adjustments in her life, her diet. I know in my case, my mother was advised by her doctor to eat yogurt, and she hates yogurt. She said, "I hate yogurt." But she forced herself to eat it because, the doctor said it would be good for her, good for the pregnancy. So out of love for her children, she had 5 of us, she forced herself to eat yogurt. So that's just one example, but, mothers do make adjustments in their behavior, their lifestyle, in order to take care of the baby that's growing inside of them. And then, that's a long period, 9.5 or 10 months. And then the time of the birth, going through that whole process of giving birth, which is quite painful and can be quite traumatic and even dangerous. Sometimes the mothers die, or the baby dies, or there's some kind of some kind of problem with the birth, even nowadays. And so it's kind of a risky and difficult situation to give birth. But she went through that. She voluntarily went through that experience for us. Because if she hadn't done that, if you think about it, if she hadn't done that, we wouldn't be here, right? Our whole life, our existence, having this body, having this life, having all the opportunities we have in our life, all the good experiences we can have, and so on. It's none of that would have happened if it hadn't been for her, if she hadn't gone through that. So it's a really powerful meditation to do. I know in my own case, I didn't have such a good relationship with my parents when I first came to Buddhism. And when even just hearing about this meditation, listening to a teacher describing it, it just made me feel, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. All I remembered was, the scoldings and the discipline and the things they did that I didn't like, and they didn't do what I wanted them to do. I remembered all those things, but I never really thought about all that they did do for me, especially my mother. So it was really life-changing to do that, to do that meditation and just come to appreciate my mother and also my father, the role that he played in my upbringing. And then after we're born, we're just this tiny little baby, and completely helpless, completely dependent on others. We wouldn't be able to do anything for ourselves. All the baby can do is lie on its back and cry, wave its arms and legs in the air and cry. Can't move, can't turn over, can't find food for itself. And so, again, without the mother, usually it's the mother who takes most care of the baby, but other people as well, sometimes the father, grandmother, and so on. So without those people taking care of this little baby, the baby wouldn't survive. It would die. And so, again, putting ourselves in that situation and thinking, I was like that. I was that tiny, helpless baby, and my mother took care of me. And maybe some of you have been mothers, you know what it's like. It's a 24-hour-a-day job. Even during the night, you don't get a good night's sleep. Every couple of hours, the baby wakes up crying, hungry, and you have to get up and feed the baby. So, for at least a few months, maybe a year, you're just full time taking care of this little baby. And hopefully your mother did that with love, with genuine, sincere love and caring. So that's just the beginning. And then just thinking of all the other things that our mother has done for us. We could go on and on and on about that. And like I say, it's a really powerful meditation. It's been helpful for me. It's been helpful to a lot of other people as well, to help them start healing their relationship with their mother and recognize the kindness of their mother. And then if your mother wasn't kind, you can think of someone else. There must have been somebody there to take care of you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here today, because somebody took care of you when you were a baby. So whoever it was, or may have been a number of people, just think of those people and what they did for you, how they took care of you when you were small, and then growing up over the years, taking you to school, helping you with your homework, doing your laundry, cooking for you, and so on and so forth. And another thing too is that mothers don't get paid, usually, as far as I know. Mothers don't get paid for the work they do. It's like a volunteer work, right? No salary. So it's really a labor of love, a work of love. I know that was, in my case, my mother was just very loving, really wanted to have babies and take care of them. And then, that's just one example, our mother. But then, we can also think of the kindness of other people, like I mentioned during the meditation, like teachers, our school teachers, mentors, coaches, if you were into sports, those who helped you learn to play basketball or baseball or swimming or whatever it was, those who taught you other skills that you now have, right? So the point is, when we come into this world, we're like naked. We don't have anything and we don't know anything. We can't do anything, right? So everything we now have and everything we know, all the knowledge, the skills, the abilities that we have, we are dependent on others for all those things. Our parents, other family members, teachers, friends, mentors, and so on. So just recognizing that, how much we are dependent on others, how much others do for us. Yeah, it's very powerful, very life-changing. It really helps us get out of ourselves, get out of a kind of self-centered attitude and think about others and realize I have to be kind to others. I have to help others because they help me so much. And that includes not just the people we meet, but also like I mentioned, all the food that we eat. Every day we eat several meals, and all the drinks we drink, and the clothes we wear, and everything, all the things we own and use, enjoy, benefit from. All of these things come from other people. There are people who work and produce those things and provide those things to us. And so you could go on and on and on thinking about all these examples. And it's really, really helpful to open up the heart and feel a sense of, wow, I receive so much from others, and it's only right, only natural that I help them in return. At least be kind to them, at least be nice to them, at least treat them with kindness. So yeah, so that's another way of cultivating kindness, loving kindness towards others, by recognizing what we receive from them. And in the Tibetan tradition, or it's actually in the Mahayana tradition, there's this idea that every being has been our mother. And this isn't just an idea, it was spoken by the Buddha. I've seen the sutra where the Buddha said this. He said, he can't see a beginning to our existence, to our cycling through samsara, dying and being reborn and over and over and over again. And he can't see anyone who hasn't been our mother or our father, our brother, our sister, and so on. So every being in our long journey from beginningless time until now, the idea is every living being has been in that role of mother to us. They've given birth to us, took care of us, kept us alive, gave us all their love, and so on. And so that's a very difficult idea to accept. Even for Tibetans, they say that's a really hard one. But it's also a really beautiful idea, even if you have trouble accepting it. But just to think, what if it's true? What if it's true that every living being has been my mother and has been kind to me? I've received kindness from every living being. Wow, wouldn't that be amazing? And one time in a class I was attending, it was Khensur Jampa Tekchok. Some of you may have met. He spent some time in America, especially in California, teaching. Wonderful teacher. And so one day I was in a class with him, and he started off the class asking us, why is it that the Buddhas have compassion for everybody? Why do the Buddhas have compassion for every living being? And he wanted us to answer. So different students were, answering the questions, saying this, saying that, and so on. And he wasn't happy with any of the answers. Nobody gave the answer that he was looking for. And so finally he said, the reason that the Buddhas have compassion for all living beings is because they can remember all their past lives, and they can see all the relationships that they have had with every living being. and they can directly see the kindness that they have received from every living being. So I found that really powerful. That, yeah, I mean, that's what they say. A Buddha is someone who has total recall. They can remember all their previous lives, and they can see all the connections that they've had, all the relationships that they've had with every being who has been their mother, father, and so on and so forth. And they can see in their own experience that they have had that mother-child relationship. They've been the child of every living being and received that, enormous amount of kindness from every living being. So they can. So what the teacher was saying was that the Buddhists can see that directly. They can remember that directly, and so that it's like just naturally, yeah. They feel this sense of caring for every living being and wanting to help them, wanting to free them from suffering, wanting to bring them to happiness, to enlightenment. Just like if we do see the kindness of our mother, if we can clearly see how kind our mother has been to us, and we have a really good relationship with our mother, she's done so much for me, then if she was in trouble, like if she was trapped in a burning building, we would do anything to get her out. We wouldn't leave her there. We would rush in and just do whatever we could to save her. So that's the kind of meditation that's done. And of course, you have to do this again and again. It's not easy, but doing this kind of meditation is one of the steps that enables a person to develop this aspiration to become a Buddha. I want to become a Buddha. I want to become enlightened so that I can help every sentient being, because they have all helped me. They're all my mother sentient beings. So Tibetans have that expression, mother sentient beings, and it's in some of the prayers that they recite every day. Maybe some of you recite those prayers as well, like in the Guru Puja. So mother sentient beings. And yeah, so you can really get a sense of that, or even just imagine, what if that's true? Yeah, maybe it's true. What if it is true? Then it can really help to open your heart to others, and then naturally feel this wish to treat them with kindness in return. Okay, so that's just a little bit of an introduction to that method of cultivating loving kindness. And you can do this in your daily life. You don't have to always do it in a formal way, like a formal meditation session. But just, in your daily life, when you're buying food or cooking food, eating food, just to spend a bit of time thinking about where the food came from, the people that made it possible for you to have this food. And the same when you're, enjoying your house, your apartment, your furniture, whatever it is you have and enjoy, just to think, there are people who made these things, and if they hadn't, if people hadn't made those things, I wouldn't be able to have them. Yeah, so just going about our daily life, we can cultivate this awareness of how we are dependent on others, how others are kind to us. And it can happen that in our mind, this doubt might come up in our mind. I know it's happened to me, where we think, but I benefit them. If I buy food from, a fruit seller or, the supermarket, then, I am helping them. I'm supporting them. So that's true. Yeah, not to be denied. But then you can ask yourself, where did the money come from? Where did you get that money? We didn't come into this world with money in our hands, most people. Although some, of course, inherit money from parents. But then again, that's coming from somebody else, right? It's our parents, family that gave us that money that we have to then buy food. Or most cases, people work for their money. You know, they get a job, they earn a salary, and so they work for it. But then, even then, we're still dependent on others because in order to get a job, you have to have an employer. You have to have someone who's willing to hire you. And you also have to have knowledge and skills to be able to qualify for that job. And so you're dependent on others for those things, right? We learn our knowledge, our skills, we learned from other people. We weren't born with them. And then, you know, being hired by an employer, a company, you know, we're dependent on them. They're paying us the salary for the work we do. So even if we work for ourselves and earn our own money, we're still dependent on others. You know? So we can't really say that money is mine. It's always been mine, you know, from the beginning of our life without depending on anyone else. So if we think about it, then we can recognize that, yeah, in every aspect of our life, we are dependent on others. We benefit from others. So, yeah. Just excuse me, I need to take a Tibetan pill. If anyone has a question, you can raise your hand. No questions yet? Okay, so leave some more time later at the end of class. So, I think it was last week I mentioned that when it comes to love, the kind of love we're trying to cultivate here on the spiritual path, it's ideally it's love that isn't mixed with attachment. And that's very tricky. That's a really tricky thing because in our relationships with our family members, our friends, pets, if you're married or have a partner. So in those relationships, we feel love. But if we check carefully, there's probably some attachment mixed in. So does anyone remember what I said last week about the difference between love and attachment? Or if you have your own ideas about what is the difference between love and attachment? Christy? Yeah?
Okay. Love is when you're focused on the other person, and attachment is when you're focused on yourself. You know what that person do for you.
Yeah, that's usually the way of explaining it. So attachment, you know, it's really about me.
Mm.
I am, you know, I mean, we're all that way. We're all like that. We're very self-centered. We feel I am the center of the universe, and I want this, and I want that. I want good things to happen to me. I want people to be nice to me. I want to enjoy this, and I don't want that experience, and so on. So we have a lot of thoughts and feelings. And it's not wrong to want to be happy. Okay, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be happy. But we tend to look for happiness in the wrong ways. We think, we tend to think, oh, if I have a lot of money, if I have a lot of things, if I travel, I have this, I have that, I have that, So a lot of our ideas about happiness are related to sensory things, things we see, hear, smell, taste, feel with our body, and also to a certain extent our mind, intellectual stimulation, things that stimulate our mind. So we tend to look for happiness in those ways, in those things. And according to Buddhism, that's not the real source of happiness. The real source of happiness is positive states of mind, positive qualities like love, compassion, and altruism, bodhicitta, and so on and so forth, and spiritual qualities like contentment and non-attachment rather than attachment. So there's these different qualities explained in Buddhism, mental qualities, mental states that are much more satisfying, much more, gratifying than what we normally look for happiness, like sensory things and material things, wealth and so on. And so it's fine to be happy. It's fine to have the wish to be happy, and it's fine to have happiness. We should have happiness. But the tendency of most people is to be very self-centered. Yeah. And in our relationships with others, if we check carefully, even though there's love, we do feel love for the other person, but that love may not be 100% unconditional. It might be conditional. So conditional love is like, well, as long as you love me, and as long as you make me happy and you do what I want you to do, and so on. So we have kind of a lot of conditions, a lot of expectations on the other person for the love that we give them. And it can happen that if the other person doesn't live up to our expectations, doesn't meet the conditions we have, then we might stop loving them. So that happens a lot. You probably had that experience yourself of, falling out of a loving relationship because, it's not working anymore. And often it's because the person isn't doing what we want them to do, and they're doing opposite to what we want them to do. And so often, not always, but often our relationships are like that. They're conditional. They're mixed with attachment and not genuine, unconditional love. But I think in the case of mothers and children, I think that kind of love is often more unconditional because, even if the child gets angry at the mother and hurts the mother or starts doing criminal activities, maybe even ends up in jail, the mother will continue loving them, caring for them. You have mothers, going to visit their kids in jail, sending them things, caring for them in spite of what they have done. So there are, of course, cases like that of love that is unconditional, love that sustains even when the other person doesn't live up to your wishes and your expectations. But another thing too that can happen when there's attachment mixed in with our love is then our love becomes somewhat limited and biased. We have it only for some people, like those who meet our expectations, people we like. We like the way they are, the way they behave, their point of view, and so on. So towards them, we feel love. But then those who are outside of that sphere, who have different points of view, different ways of behaving, different attitudes, and so on, then we find it very difficult to feel love for them. And yeah, so the ideal kind of love that we're trying to cultivate here in Buddhism is pure and unconditional love. So, we don't put conditions on other people as just the fact that there is a person there, a human being or a living being, that they exist. Yeah, their very existence. Just because they exist, they deserve love. You don't have to be a certain way. You don't have to perform a certain way according to my wishes. You don't have to think the same way as me and have the same lifestyle as me. None of those things. We don't put any of those things on the other person, but we love them just because they're there, just because they exist. So, of course, that's not easy to do. That's the kind of love that a Buddha would have. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they have that kind of love. But we can cultivate it too. We can develop that kind of love as well. It's not impossible. Yeah. And one thing that can help is to contemplate Buddha nature, how every living being has Buddha nature. That means they all have the potential to become fully enlightened. So even if at this point in time, like a person, may be acting in a very deluded way, a very afflicted way, doing a lot of harmful things, maybe even killing, causing a lot of death and destruction and suffering. And so we may think it's very difficult to feel love for that person. But the person, even someone like that, they're not always like that. That's not sort of a permanent thing. According to Buddhism, we all have afflictions, and sometimes, in some persons, afflictions get really, really strong and just take over their mind, and they just get totally overwhelmed by their afflictions. And that's why they do things like that, causing war, death, destruction, or they're very corrupt, very self-centered, and so on. So this is due to the afflictions in their mind. And it isn't something permanent. Because Buddha says that every being has the potential to change themselves. Everybody has good qualities, and everybody has a pure state of mind. Our basic nature is pure, and it's possible for that pure aspect of our being to come out and be developed and eventually become fully enlightened. So every living being has that potential. And there are Buddhas, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who are working to help us, to show us the potential that we have and guide us in how to develop it. So a Buddha would be able to see that, yeah, okay, even that very deluded, very harmful person, they're not going to be like that forever. No, they're not. Right now, they're creating all this suffering. And they'll probably suffer themselves in the future as a result of the suffering they're causing now. But that's just temporary. That's not a permanent situation. They will eventually get out of that deluded and suffering situation, and they'll get on the path, and they'll be guided to their attainment of enlightenment. So everyone will eventually, it may take a long time, many lifetimes, but everyone will eventually arise out of samsara and delusions and hatred and so on, and become a Buddha. So that way of thinking can help us be more open to and see the possibility of having love and compassion, even for people like that, for very, very difficult people. So one question to ponder, to think about is, in order to feel love for someone, do we have to like them? Do we have to like the person in order to love them? Probably most people would say, of course. How can you love someone if you don't even like them? um, but I don't think that's the case, because I think, there are, of course, people whose behavior we find unacceptable, and we might even say things or think things like, I hate that person, I can't stand that person, because da 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 da, things they do, things they say, attitudes they have, and so on. So we don't really like that person, but it's still possible to have love, loving kindness for that person. Because to have loving kindness for someone, it isn't necessary to accept everything they do and say, oh, everything you do is fine, everything you do is okay, and I love you. We don't have to do that. So just to give you an example, one time I was attending teachings with the Dalai Lama. He was giving teachings in Hamburg, Germany. And in the course of the teachings, he would sometimes talk about different leaders, different politicians that he had met, European ones. And one day he started talking about George Bush. That was in the early 2000s when George W. Bush was president. And he said, with 100% sincerity, he said, I like George Bush. I don't like his politics, but I like him as a person. He's very down to earth. And when I heard him say that, I was like astonished, because I didn't like George Bush. I felt a lot of anger towards him for starting the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan. So for me, he was like, oh, I can't stand that guy. Just to see his photo in the paper and so on, his name mentioned, I would just feel this coming up. And it was very powerful, because I have a lot of respect for the Dalai Lama. I really think he's an amazing person, has so much wisdom, and yeah. And so to hear this person I respect so much say that he likes this other person that I can't stand was like, huh? And it made me think, well, there must be something there. I can't, and I don't think the Dalai Lama was lying. He must. And also another thing I realized was I never even met George Bush. I've never been in the same room with him. So I can't really say that I know him, right? Whereas the Dalai Lama has met him. They have met, spent time together, talked together, had meals together. So he's in a better position to know George Bush than I am, right? So I thought, well, there must be some good qualities there in that man that I couldn't stand. For the Dalai Lama to say that, to say, I like George Bush. Okay, so there must be some good qualities there. And it was also very helpful for the comment that he made, I don't like his politics, but I like him as a person. So there he's talking about a Buddhist, there is this idea in Buddhism that, when there's a person who's behaving in some harmful way, some unacceptable way, that instead of condemning the person, you condemn that behavior. You can say, I don't like that behavior is wrong, but you do that without condemning the person. You make a separation in your mind. You separate the person, the human being, who has a lot of good qualities, who has Buddha nature, who isn't like permanently horrible and bad. So you separate the person, and then their behavior, that harmful, unacceptable behavior, that attitude they have, those words they speak. So those are something else. Those are something that the person does, but they aren't like inherently part of the person. And so you make that separation in your mind, and you can condemn that behavior. You can say, that behavior is wrong. That is wrong. I don't agree with that. But I can still like the person. I can still care about the person. I can still have love and compassion for the person, wanting them to be happy, wanting them to not suffer. So that's what the Dalai Lama was doing, yeah, in those statements. And I found that very, very, very helpful. And it helped me gradually get over my anger, my hatred, bad feelings towards George Bush. I knew it was wrong to feel that way, but it was just really hard to overcome it. But yeah, His Holiness Dalai Lama reminding me of that way of thinking. Yeah, that you can say, I don't like his politics. I don't like the fact that he started that war and did such and such and such. I don't like that. I don't agree with that. But I can still care about him as a person. So, yeah, so that's why I say, I think, we don't have to like someone, meaning we don't have to like everything about the person, everything they do and say and so on. And we can still have love for them. We can still have loving kindness for them. So I hope that makes sense. It takes time. I mean, I think in most cases, and certainly in my case, it can take time with the, difficult ones, the difficult people, and there's so many of them in the world right now. Or but also in your life, in your family, in your neighborhood, in your workplace, people who are really difficult, really challenging to feel love for. But if you slowly work on this, just find ways of thinking differently, then it is possible to overcome aversion and anger and hatred and even feel a sense of love for that person. And even just trying to do that can be helpful. I'll tell you another story. I heard this young woman, her job involved answering the phone at a company, and it was the people calling were clients who were using the business. And she said sometimes when these clients would call, they were angry. They were angry because something wasn't working. They were calling up to complain. And so when she heard the tone of voice of this person who was calling, and she knew that they were angry, that would trigger her anger. She would also feel angry, annoyed. And then she would speak in an angry way to that person. So the two of them would be angry. They would be speaking in an angry way. And it wasn't at all nice, pleasant conversation. So after learning the loving kindness meditation, then she tried that. So she said when she would hear the tone of voice of the other person and could tell that they were angry, she would just say to herself, thinking about that person, she would say, may you be happy, may you be happy, may you be happy. And doing that helped her to not get angry, helped her to stay calm and non-angry at the other person. And so then she wasn't speaking in an angry way to the person. And then that would help them to calm down. They would also, calm down. So then the conversation between them would be much nicer, more pleasant, more civil rather than angry. So that's like, a very quick, very immediate benefit of doing the loving kindness meditation. So that's something you could try. If you are finding yourself confronted with another person who's angry at you or angry or just manifesting some kind of negative behavior, and there's the danger that your anger would get triggered. You would start feeling angry at them. Then this is something you could try. Just bring up loving kindness. May you be happy. even to just say the words. May be hard to feel it, to actually feel that, but saying those words could help you to be in a better state of mind. And if you can be in a better state of mind, that will probably help the other person to, yeah, feel listened to and cared about, rather than, knocking against you. And there's another story. I read this one in a book of Sharon Salzberg. Sharon Salzberg, a teacher in the Theravada tradition. I think she wrote a wonderful book called Loving Kindness, the Revolutionary Art of Happiness. It's been around a long time, a wonderful book. And there's one story in there that stays in my mind. She was leading a retreat on loving kindness somewhere in a city. And during a break time, she asked the people in the retreat to just go out and walk around in the city and generate loving kindness for people that they saw. So there was one woman who went to a train station, and she was just in the train station looking at people. And she saw this one man standing, and he was waiting for a train, and he looked really nervous. And it seems like she had some kind of maybe feeling of irritation towards him because he looked kind of really tense and nervous. But she, in her mind, she was just generating loving kindness for that person, saying, may you be happy, may you have good experiences, da da da, whatever the phrases they were using. So she was doing that for a few minutes. And then this man walked over to her and he said, can you please pray for me? Can you imagine that? A total stranger coming up to you in a train station saying, please pray for me. And he explained that he was on his way to some meeting, or maybe it was an interview, a job interview, something that was, producing anxiety, something he was really nervous about, anxious about, and felt he wanted some prayers. But he must have picked up on her. He must have picked up on the fact that she was generating these positive feelings for him, for him to ask her to pray. So again, it shows that, even if it's a little bit difficult for us to kind of forcing ourselves to feel loving kindness for somebody, that it can be effective. Yeah, they may feel it. They may feel some benefit from it. Oh, I forgot. Yeah. So we're almost out of time. And there's one thing I wanted to do. Do you have that Metta Sutra, the file? Okay, so this is one more thing that we can do to cultivate loving kindness. This is the sutra, the words of the Buddha when he first taught. Oh, don't make it too big. It's a little, yeah, okay. That's good. The Buddha, and the story behind this is, I heard that, so some of the Buddha's disciples were meditating in the forest, and they didn't have like a building to live in. They were just out in the open. And they were kind of scared because there were tigers and snakes and, dangerous things that might attack them. And so they asked the Buddha, what should we do? How can we protect ourselves? And the Buddha said, generate loving kindness. Generate metta. Metta is the Pali word for loving kindness. And so he taught this. He gave this teaching. And by meditating on loving kindness, the monks were able to protect themselves. So it's really, really beautiful. And I thought we could just read this together, so you can read it along with me. And then afterwards, it can be put in the chat box. You can have it for yourself. So this is something else you could do to generate loving kindness. Read this sutra. Okay, this is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing, in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Continues. I think if you scroll up, there should be some more. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. So the last part he's talking about the actual cultivation of immeasurable loving kindness, which can lead to a very high state of concentration, a very pure, blissful state of concentration. But even at our level, just trying to cultivate that state of mind that's described here of having loving kindness for all beings everywhere. Okay, so I thought next week I'll start talking about compassion. That's the second of the four immeasurables. And if you have any questions about loving kindness, you can send them in to the center, and they can send them to me and I'll answer them in the next class. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful to you and helpful to your loving kindness, which is good for you and also good for the world. The world needs it. So let's close with a dedication of the merit, positive energy that we've generated in this class. So we could have the dedication prayer. So we'll share them with all living beings. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. And then the long life of the Dalai Lama. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-fulfilling, wish-granting jewel, source of every benefit and happiness in this world. May you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Patient in bearing the hardships of spreading the teachings of the Muni in general and the teachings of the victorious Jamgon in hundreds of directions, Lord of Dharma, holding the 3 vows and wearing saffron robes, Please please quickly return as the glory of the peerless teachings. So thank you for joining. Thank you for Sila for facilitating. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.